Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, and it is day 116 since October 7th. This weekend, I think I've mentioned, I participated in a couple of events connected to some of our church partners. One was here in Alexandria, Virginia, very close to Washington, D.C., and another one was a Sunday event online with one of our church partners back in Washington State. And yesterday I got an email from someone who participated in the online session. And they sent a note of encouragement about our time together. And they said that they had some things that we discussed that had provoked them, and it had provoked within them a need for some spiritual realignment. And I thought that was such a good word. And I think we all need spiritual realignment, some every day, and sometimes in our lives more significantly than others. This person closed the note and said that they felt more committed on their personal journey in faith and also in pursuing hope. And I was encouraged. And I also felt moved in my spirit, because I felt the email encapsulated a lot of what I've experienced over the past 116 days. I don't think we can engage in this work of pursuing peace and advocating for justice and entering into the stories and the pain and the suffering of others without it demanding of us that we face our own brokenness, our own weakness, our own frailty, our own wrong, what some people would call sin, and that it demand in us that we engage in at least some degree, if not severe degrees, of spiritual realignment. So my email response to that person I wanted to share with you. I said, goodness, all of this has been a spiritual journey for me. Heart-wrenching. Absolutely heart-wrenching. Part of what I was trying to say last night is that the invitation from Jesus to us is that if we're committed to entering into pursuing peace, nothing shines a light on our own insides more clearly. The whole idea of Jesus saying, you've heard it said, do not kill, but I say, do not be angry with anyone. I've never been quite confronted with the own anger in my own heart. The challenge to start from that which is within me, the invitation of God to make peace within our own hearts, as we are seeking to help bring peace into the world. It is not an easy journey, to say the least. So that's my invitation to myself, but also to you today, that you might join me and that we might join together on this not so easy journey of looking within, but also of entering into spiritual realignment, of seeking to become more like God as we seek to honor him by loving our neighbor and also loving our enemy, or maybe those who have identified us as their enemies, as we seek to be agents of peace, calling for an end to war, violence, death, and destruction. So with that, a little bit of updates in terms of what has been happening in the news in the last 24 hours. In terms of what the world has identified as the war between Israel and Hamas, Qatar, Egypt, Israel, and the United States are expected to propose a 6-week pause in fighting for Hamas to exchange Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners, is part of what's being reported in the news. We still continue to hear that these conversations have progressed, but no absolute news in terms of a temporary pause or even a permanent ceasefire. There's conversations about what's being called like a Paris agreement coming from Qatar, Egypt, Israel, and the United States having been presented to Hamas, but no news yet on if that's been accepted or where that stands specifically. We do know that the United Nations Relief Agency, UNRWA, is soon expected to run out of money, according to UNRWA officials. Many donors, as I mentioned yesterday, have halted funding over accusations from Israel that some UNRWA employees allegedly have taken part in attacks, the attacks of October 7th. We also know that communication blackouts and restrictions have been placed on foreign journalists, and thus it has made it difficult for people outside of Gaza to grasp and understand the true scale of the destruction that has happened there. In addition, here in Washington, D.C., the Qatari Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs has been in town, having met with Biden administration officials, including Secretary Blinken. According to the U.S. State Department, the leaders discussed the importance of facilitating the immediate release of all hostages held by Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza. Secretary Blinken expressed gratitude for Qatar's indispensable mediation efforts. Qatar and the State Department agreed to continue close coordination to provide increased humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza and to urge the protection of civilians consistent with humanitarian law. Secretary Blinken underscored the United States' commitment to a more peaceful, integrated, and prosperous Middle East with security for Israel and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. They also discussed concerns with the Houthi threat to navigational rights and freedoms in the Red Sea, and the leaders reaffirmed the strength and importance of the U.S.-Qatar bilateral relationship in promoting regional security and stability, founded on a history of over 50 years of close cooperations. That is a direct readout from the U.S. State Department. There was an article in the New York Times that I wanted to share that recounts the story of Liliana Serge, who is a Holocaust survivor. She has dedicated her life to the remembrance of the Holocaust, and she's deeply concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism. And the whole article is about her wondering about whether or not her work has been in vain. And it says this: for decades, she visited Italian classrooms to recount her expulsion from school under Mussolini's anti-Semitic racial laws, her doomed attempt to flee Nazi-controlled Italy, her deportation from Milan's train station to death camps in Auschwitz, her plain-spoken testimony about gas chambers, tattooed arms, casual atrocities, the murders of her father, her grandparents, and thousands of other Italian Jews, made her the conscience and living memory of a country that often prefers not to remember. But now she's wondering if it was all wasted breath. Why did I suffer for 30 years to share such intimate things of my family, my pain, and my desperation? For whom? Why? Miss Segra now today is 93 years old with cotton white hair, a steel cage memory, and an official status as a senator for life. She said last week in her handsome Milan apartment, where she sat next to a police escort, and she wondered for the first time these days if I've lived in vain. Even as she accepted another honorary degree to mark Holocaust Remembrance Day, the rising anti-Semitism and what she considers a general climate of hate have put her in a pessimistic mood. And I just want us to remember her. I want us to remember this 93-year-old woman who lived through such incredible trauma. And I want us to stand against anti-Semitism. And I want us to say her life has not been in vain. Just as we remember, another Holocaust survivor who has been a great encouragement to us at Churches for Middle East Peace. He called us shortly after October and said, I want to support the work of Churches for Middle East Peace because I ardently oppose the bombing of Gaza. And he said, I believe that we should do everything we can because it is morally wrong and it is a crime against God. And he, as a survivor of the Holocaust, is ardently supporting the Palestinian cause and justice for Palestinians. And so, friends, I continue to say there is much work to be done within us as we seek to be spiritually aligned with God, realigned and reconnected to our Creator, and reconciled to one another. And so may God continue to go before us in our efforts.